Welcome back to All the Cars I've Loved Before, the podcast where we park the specs and stats at the door, and then we focus on the stories that really matter. You know what time it is. It's time to throw on that faded car t-shirt, hat, get a little grease under our nails, or step back in time. We're here to talk about that very first car, that sense of pure freedom with the windows down, the music pinned, and your best friends piled in the back. Because at the end of the day, every car tells a story, and these stories reveal who we actually are. Whether it's the forgotten beater, a lifelong project sitting away in the corner in the garage, or the one that got away, we're diving into the personal history behind the metal. I'm Doug. I'm going solo tonight without my co-host Dave. He is here in spirit, but this is where the car culture meets your life story. So without further ado, we're going to get into it. Just a quick update on my part. Spent a little time this past weekend on sim racing and driver development in Annapolis. This is your F1 lounge. I can't tell you enough great things about it. I can't wait to get back there. Strapped into a GT rig and drove a Porsche Cayman GT4 with a 6-speed manual and tons of fun. There were father-sons there. There were siblings there racing against each other. They have leagues. Definitely worth checking out if you're in the Annapolis area. Of course, these are not unique just to Annapolis. They're all over. And for their site, it is drivep1.com. Again, P1 Sim Racing and Driver Development in Annapolis. Now we want to drop into talk about our guests. Our guest today is Ryan Williams. He's a software engineer who self-proclaimed came into cars late. He got interested in podcasts, and like myself, he was looking for a hobby that would get him off his daily ride being his computer, just like myself as a network engineer, aka computer network plumber. Ryan has taken on a really interesting quest, if you will. He has started a podcast player, that's how we connected, called Car Curious. And Ryan, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Doug. Great to be here.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.
I'm going to have to ask you to explain the 718 Cayman at some point during this.
Well, it was a virtual one, but yeah, it's a cool car, flat 6 versus the Turbo 4. Amongst other things, but yeah, kind of set up for racing. In the case of the P1 Sim Racing, they let me choose if I wanted to do a stick shift or a PDK, as Porsche calls it, manual transmission. Yep. I chose stick shift. I don't actually know if the GT4 actually comes with the stick shift or not. Porsche only makes so many stick shifts. Everybody's gone to the super amazing automatic PDK, which is quite amazing. Tell us a little bit about yourself, where you hail from, and a little bit about Car Curious, and then we'll jump into your cars, and then we'll circle back and talk more about Car Curious and where that's going.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to. So just real quick, I'm from Portland, Oregon area. Have grown up and lived in the Northwest most of my life. Kind of a dad, family man, been raising a family for the last 2 decades, 4 kids ranging from 21 to 11, and have just been, really busy with work and family. And over that time, as kids start leaving, we find ourselves with more time. And of course, like you said, how do we find something that's not on the computer? Health and physically and mentally requires something else. So, I'd always just, been an admirer of cars, but not super handy. And then, I got this itch kind of like, everybody talks about manuals. So let me explore what this means a little. Started listening to a few podcasts, and it just kept talking about it. And, after a while, but to our earlier conversation, there were so many terms thrown out, the transmission, different transmission, the on the Porsches, the different model codes of the Porsches, the different model codes and chassis codes of the BMWs, that I was just like, what do these all mean? And you switch into Google, and I'm like, well, what if there was a way I could just, have something explain or show me a picture of that car they're talking about as I'm listening. And so that's what got me more curious. So back to the computer, and came up, with some ideas, exploration, also, using all of these amazing new AI tools that we have at our disposal to see if I could build a product that would kind of, like you said, scratch that itch and help me kind of learn more about cars and deepen my interest and understanding as well. And so launched that couple months ago on the web, and building a mobile player, because of course not everybody wants to listen to podcasts on their computers. So finding a way to get it into a native format as well, to serve that audience that's out on walks, doing dishes, doing chores, and then maybe they can glance down at the player as terms come up. And that kind of led us to meeting as I was exploring the market, and of course was just kept expanding and finding more and more great stories out there around cars and car podcasts. So it's a great community, and yeah, I'm just excited to kind of see where we go.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm excited to have you here, not only to talk about Car Curious, because having a podcast about cars, like perfect fit, and I
Yeah.
love what you're doing with it. But let's hop into my time machine, my 1981 DeLorean, without all the time machine stuff, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you feel about it. And let's hop back to your first car. Tell us about it. It's a Mazda, which was my second car. Tell us
Okay.
about your Mazda. What year, make, model, color?
Yeah, I think it was my one and only Mazda. It was the 1978 Mazda GLC yellow, and affectionately or not referred to as the lemon, kind of fit the bill, in many ways, both in terms of the way it looks and, of course, its actual performance and reliability. So, yeah, as a teenager, of course, we all kind of dream of what car we're going to drive once we get our license. Was driving my parents' cars for a little bit, and then, of course, they wanted to have their
Mhm,
cars back, and they ended up helping out and buying it. But sight unseen to me, I came home from practice one night, and there's this yellow car in the driveway. I'm like, "What's that?"
mhm,
And it's like, "Oh, that's your car." And I'm like, "Okay, well," was not super thrilled with it, but it was transportation, right? And a really thoughtful thing that my dad had done. And so back then we had newspaper classifieds. I think that's
yeah,
how he found it. And we lived a little bit out in the country, so in the Eugene area in Oregon, and he found it
mhm,
there, brought it home. Next day wouldn't start up, right? So so tried to one thing led to another. I think he tried to return it to the guy, and the guy's like, "No way. I think you guys just changed your mind. There's nothing wrong with the car." But
oh, man.
we were stuck with it, I guess. But the one thing it had going for it was, it's easy enough, not necessarily for me, either then
Mhm.
or now, to fix, but pretty simple mechanically, I think. And so we got it fixed up, and I think it ran again through most of my high school days. But yeah, certainly didn't win any cool car award.
And you're for those when people see the YouTube version of this, right, we do audio first and we do YouTube the following week, you're really
Yep.
smiling, talking about it. What great memories do you have of that car besides the wonderful color? And I'm joking about the color, but certainly you're being surprised, but there had to be some great memories, like just thinking back, like what popped into your head when we started talking about this or when you filled out our intake form to talk about your car?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great question because it was certainly, a fun time driving
Mhm.
around with friends, lots of trips for baseball practices and games. I was like a big baseball player in high school. That's where I spent most of my time.
Okay.
Got to learn a little bit about like changing oil, my
Mhm.
dad would show me that. And so, memories of working on it with my dad and like just talking about cars or being around the car were some of the fun things. I think, I think I was pulled over one time, may have received a citation for which was kind of notorious because I was not like a drinker or anything, but there
Mhm.
happened to be something in the car that was not supposed to be there for teenagers.
Gotcha.
That was certainly a strong memory, less whatever you wanna call it. Yeah, just hanging out with friends in our high school days and good memories there.
Yeah, and I think we were talking before in the preamble, before we started recording, and you mentioned something about barely making up a mountain on your longest baseball trip.
Yeah, a good one. Yeah, I think it was like the end of high school, and there was a all-star game like 2 hours
Mhm.
south of us, and so me and my buddy that were on the team, for whatever reason, we decided to take this car, not one of the
Drove
better
solo. Yeah. No cell phones, right? We're of the same age group.
No, well, this is like, 95, and then but there's a little bit of hill, and so the trucks, were slowing down, and they've got their
Mhm.
flashers on and pulling off to the side, and I didn't know if we were gonna make it or not, but not a lot of, you know, horsepower there for sure, but we did make it eventually, and then got to do the ride home, or got to do some downhill, once we got
Okay.
to the top, so that's always the fun part, right?
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Coasted downhill. Was it manual or automatic?
It was a manual, yeah,
All
and so that
right.
was the way I learned, and yeah, just that coasting, that was always a fun thing.
Yep. Yep. No, just the engagement with the manual. That's the best part, is being more plugged in. Was there any unique we'll go on to your second car in a second, but I always think back, was there something unique, and I could think of my own Mazda, first Mazda, I had 4 Mazdas, but was there anything unique about that car? Like, maybe it was something Mazda touted, or like in my case, I had a Mazda RX-7 was my first stick shift car. It was a beaten up one, but I had a Mazda
Mhm.
RX-7, and it had something that I just thought was cool. It had a alarm that went off when you got close to the red line. And I'm like,
Mm,
"That's so cool." And of course, my dad's like, "You better not set that alarm off because that's not good for the engine." But
right.
it's there to warn you. Was it a gimmick? Absolutely, right?
Yep.
But it was cool. Do you remember anything about your Mazda having that?
I mean, it was just, an old tin can, right? Special to it. I don't even think we tried to hook up some stereo stuff as teenagers
Okay.
like to do.
Sure, that's
So it was
important.
kind of an experimental test bed a little bit, but like
Gotcha.
nothing that was super stood out on that
Yeah.
one.
But it had lights and things like that, right?
Yeah. This was the era of what, like, post late 70s, like, cars were just kinda being stripped down to minimal,
Yep.
like,
Yep. Yeah, it
requirements,
was all
right?
about
So
emissions. And yeah. Yep. And light, being light in that case. So yeah,
yes, yes, yeah.
yeah.
So,
Cool. Cool.
kept it
Well,
in one
thanks.
piece.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing. I'm glad the old lemon got you through high school and whatnot. And
Yeah,
yeah. And so tell us about your second car.
yeah. So, I think went away for college my first year. I
Mhm.
was kinda gone for most of it. The summer following that first year, time to get a job, baseball career had kinda wrapped up at that point,
Mm.
but I had to get to the job. I had a girlfriend that I had met my first year of college, now my wife as
Excellent.
well after all of the amazing years with her, and so but she lived 2 hours away, right? So it's
Well,
like, what are we
that's a
gonna do in the
commitment.
summer?
Yeah.
Trying to figure out, like, all those logistics of, like, getting to see each other, spend time with each other, getting to work. So, found some random jobs again in the classifieds doing I had done, like, some security work at school, but never really had a real job, right? So, found
Mm.
doing inventory, like, where, those people late night in stores, like, doing inventory, like,
Oh, yeah.
they were hiring, so did that. Of course, you can kinda get as many hours as they can provide because they always need people. Managed to save up, I think, $1,500, right? So within a few weeks and bought a 1985 Nissan Sentra because I needed to get, to Portland very frequently. And again, I think we found it in the classifieds. Funny story, I think the previous owner had left an envelope of cash in the glove box. It was like, $100 or whatever. As somebody who just spent $1,500 on a car, like that's significant money, right? So it's like
Yeah.
I did get that back to the owner though.
Yeah.
But another manual, another very low power car, but it was super, super reliable for the most part and able to get me everywhere I needed to go that time in my life.
Yeah. Those were definitely great cars. And in your intake form, you mentioned it had 69 horsepower, which was a full 10 more than the Mazda. Could you
Yes,
feel?
the most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, later on, I think we did some mountain trips. Yeah, I think so in the Northwest, we kind of have a Cascade Mountain Range where people want to go to like to Central Oregon or going to skiing or the mountains or whatever. So I think that did get over there a couple of times and it did a lot better, right? But it was also
Mhm.
like, I remember times when you're running low on gas or whatever, and you definitely like start coasting down the hill as far as
Yeah.
you can too.
Yeah, and the little yellow light would pop on probably, right? The low
Yep.
fuel light. Yeah. Nowadays, it's some fancy warning system, early warning
Mhm.
system. Back then, it was like, "There's a gallon left." Maybe,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you'd be lucky to get a light of any kind, right?
Yep,
So just that little like you said, that not even it's just like the color on the gauge, right? So
yep, for sure. How long did you have that Datsun Nissan?
Nissan, yeah, I think so I ended up keeping that all the way through college
Okay.
and then got my first job out of college and drove it another few years, I think, until we bought our first house and then kinda were able to get something a little nicer. We did have a nicer car that my wife would drive to work, but
Okay.
I didn't have a long commute, so I just kept the Sentra, to get my
Yeah.
5 miles to work and worked out great. For a time there, I think moving to the 3rd car transition, there was kind of we were engaged and then we ended up right before our senior year, and then later we did a study abroad program together in Japan for 3 months in the fall and then came back from there. And I was still driving it around, doing some, baseball stuff at our school, coaching and on a club team, not a varsity team. And I was having to do a lot of driving and we wanted something a little nicer. So we ended up getting a 1996 Honda Accord
Great.
EX.
I think I had a '96 Accord too for
Very
driving.
cool.
Man, I don't wanna take your thunder. I was the first person in my family to buy a Honda, and
Uh-huh.
then slowly, like, my sister got one. My
Yep.
dad and my mom, who only had American cars, they started buying 'em. Next thing you know,
Wow, that's a big
everybody had a
switch.
Honda. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I bought mine used. It was one of the best cars I ever had. It was
Yep.
just reliable. It was, like, mostly a base model, but it was just a great car. It had just enough of everything you needed, right? Not too
Yep.
much, but more than enough. But but enough, right? It had enough power, and it was an amazing car, really
Yep.
legendary status. But
Yeah. And the
yeah,
96 was great too. Like, I don't know how much, like, you remember the difference between the 95 and the 96, but like, I don't know. It's just, it had a cooler feel, like the lights and the tail
yeah,
lights
I
and
think they had
everything.
made some. I think it was the same model, but it was like a slight
Hmm.
refresh, if
Yep.
you would. Yeah,
I think,
mine was light blue. That was a great car.
yeah. Ours was black and being the EX, like going from, but I think,
Mhm.
engine wise, I don't know. I couldn't even tell you the difference between, what is it? The LX, the EX, and then the
It
base
was like a DX, which was a base
DX. Yeah,
model. Actually, mine
exactly.
was a EX as well.
Okay.
I bought
Okay.
it
But
used. It was a great
yeah,
car.
I think ours is used, and, of course, financing a car when you have no job is always interesting.
Yeah,
Again, fortunate to have co-signers and whatnot to get us through those last few months of college. But the difference between, of course, the Sentra and that was, night and day. It was
right.
just such a joy and pleasure to drive. I mean, it was like a luxury car when you're coming from like
Yeah,
a 10, 12-year-old car. It was probably, well, by the time we got that, it was pretty incredible. And so even during some baseball trips, like we didn't always have vans at the school let us use. So we'd
yeah,
have to get our own transportation. And so I let, one guy drive the Sentra over the mountain while I drove the Corn. And it's like
yeah,
he made it, but he was like, I'm not doing that again.
yeah. He's like, I'm glad I made it because I don't know how we were gonna get back, right? Yeah. So we talked about your old cars and obviously many cars in between as a family of 4 children, family of 6, right? And,
Mm.
you had mentioned, in the intake form about Honda Pilots and other vehicles, right, that work for family. But recently, I think it was the end of last year, maybe when we started talking, you had bought a BMW and inspired by Car Curious, right? A little bit of eat your own dog food, so to speak, in my terms.
Yep.
But
Yep.
tell us about the year, the color, what's special about it, because there is something special about it, not just how you got it, right? And
Right.
the
Right.
significance of it, and it's a unique model. They only made a certain number.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, so darn cool in my opinion. And just having that classic, like analog feel, like you were talking about, right? And you just hear it over and over. Like, how do you go try that out? Like you don't go on test drives of a 20-year-old car. So you start looking, right? So one of the things that had become evident were all of the auction sites, Bring a Trailer and Cars and Bids and people talking about those. And so I just started following like different cars on those and would see some pop up, starting with the M3, because I think everybody thinks when they think E6, you think M3, right? First, at least I did coming new. I know everybody that knows these cars now knows a lot more, but you see over and over. It's like, well, they're going to be, maintenance problem. You got to take care of the big three, which can be expensive. And, they're also, they take a little bit of money to get into in the first place. As it turns out, I was working with a guy who lived in Latvia, and BMWs are cheap to fix there and
Okay.
they're abundant, right? So he had mentioned, like, what about a 330? And so it's like, or a 330i. And so I just started watching those instead of just following M's. And, some would come up. At one point, this one came up on Cars and Bids. It's a 2004 330i ZHP. And so the ZHP is a little bit higher, it's got 10 additional horsepower and some additional like styling upgrades, steering wheel, shifter, that kind of it's like a mini M, right?
M Light, I like it.
And I was like, oh, this is great. Like I'd seen a few ZHPs come and go, and I'd seen them usually go like around like anywhere between like 12 and 16. You see them on Marketplace, and then, a good one, kind of a sorted one would be, mid-teens. And this was like sitting at like $5,000 or $6,000 with, just a little bit to go. Maybe this is the one. And so I put a bid in, and I, was expecting to get beat. I was not beat. It's like soon enough, it's like, oh, you won the auction. And, it was a bid I was pretty comfortable with. But,
Mm,
again, I did it kind of, off the cuff and didn't like have a big conversation around it or anything with the family. So my wife was supportive and knew like this was an interest of mine, and it definitely was excited for me as well. But yeah, so, and we can even link to the auction at some point. It's still there.
yeah, love to.
And I had no idea what to expect from that point, but the seller was outstanding. I think, we had title and money like exchanged within a week or two. The problem was it was in Cincinnati, Ohio, right? And I'm
Yeah,
in Oregon. So we did have to so the debate was like, do you fly and drive, which was initially was thinking, but like driving from Ohio to Oregon in the middle of winter in a 22-year-old BMW
right,
that you don't know how strong it is.
right. Right. Sight unseen. Right.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you definitely, I am the thing they warn you about with all those auction sites, buying a car sight unseen and not inspecting it. But,
Right.
people are doing it,
Yeah.
and so far, so good, right? I know people have bad experiences, but there's also people having good experiences. And solar was great. The shipping on cars and bids was a little extreme, in my opinion. So my wife's uncle kind of is big into cars. He knew shippers and was able to connect me with the shipper who got it here. We got to watch it kind of travel across the country, and it showed up in the area, and I was expecting it to be literally on Monday, and it wasn't coming, and they weren't calling. And I don't
Uh-oh.
think it was till Thursday that they finally, I think they had dropped it off somewhere and then did local distribution
I
from
see.
there, because it came on a different truck here. And it showed up. So pretty exciting. So I finally had it in my hands, right? Kind of analog E46 ZHP, and got to take it for a drive, and was pretty thrilling to take that kind of first drive. I live kind of right on the edge of the growth boundary, and so can get up into some country roads pretty fast, and just had a blast with it.
Yeah. And it's been solid, knock on wood so far?
So far, it's been good. Yeah, I mean, it mostly sits, right? It's kind of the weekend car, which I don't have a garage for. And my wife's like, what is your plan with this thing? And so, got it. It did get really dirty on the way out over the mountain, so had it detailed. It looks great. Can send some pictures along too. And took it to a local BMW mechanic. That's, the guy's been working on BMWs for 40 years. They were like, you bought it where? They had never had never heard of these auction sites, I don't think, either. Gave it a clean bill of health, did a couple of vanos line repair, brake flush, auto power steering flush, and some other things. It was kind of cool. He put it up on the rack and showed me underneath, there's it was in Cincinnati. It's got 130,000 miles on it, but it only had 3 owners, so not a ton of miles and owners. And the previous owner did a lot of work on it as well, subframe reinforcement. But there was a little bit of rust, right? And so that was the one thing I was worried about, how substantial that would be. He wasn't concerned about it. I'm sure if I go to sell it at some point, I try to get it cleaned up a little bit. I don't even know what that looks like yet, but we're going to find out a little bit.
Right. Any plans, enhancements, anything in mind, or right now just drive it and enjoy it?
Definitely drive it. I think I would like to, continue to get it cleaned up. I think it's going to be fun for a year or two, whether, my kids want to have fun with it as well, or not. And then maybe move into something a little newer or something else, in a couple of years once we try this. But clean it up, get the roof, the head unit is sagging, there's a tear on and then maybe do some of the work myself, on the mechanics of it, and just kind of understand. Again, the whole point of this is
Yeah. Are your kids excited about it? I could see a lot of parental bonding going on. I mean, if you didn't have a kid that's interested in cars, maybe they're like,
yeah.
check
Yeah,
out
I
what my
think
dad bought. That's kind of interesting.
right.
About 16 and 4 years, right?
Mhm.
Whatever the date is, right? And they're eyeing the car, sizing it up, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think they quite. It remains to be seen, right? I would like to do that a little. My older son sees cars very. Maybe it's just more this generation too, very utilitarian, right?
Yeah. It's a point A to point B thing. But
Yeah.
you did buy a unique car, and I can't wait to hear your episode or watch your episode via Car Curious. And what would we see when we go through it? In your mind, what would you expect to see? Because we're talking about a unique car. We talked about a few unique cars, including, of course, my DeLorean. There'll be lots of information. But what would listeners/watchers expect to see when they listen to this episode via Get Car Curious?
Yeah, I love that question. And just thinking, as we've kind of gone through the story, is you've been talking about Porsches,
Yeah.
and then we talked about old Mazdas and Nissans.
Yes.
And so I don't know if you've looked in one of the inspirations here is in the Apple Podcast app itself, whether you're listening to music and the lyrics are scrolling by, now they do it in podcasts as well. As you're listening to the podcast, it'll scroll the transcript up, but it's just the text, right?
Mhm.
And so you think about that, and then overlaying, now you've got, as the screen moves down as you're listening, oh, there's a picture of that car. To be freeze. So a little bit of an excerpt about summarizing or doing a quick summary or explanation of what that term was or what this car means. And those are all, generated with prompts and context, through the AI engine, but using the voice of the podcaster and kind of shape that summary as well. So you'll see things on the screen popping up as you're listening. It's going to show it, and then if you want to link off and learn more about that, it'll let you do that as well. So the images are coming still from various sources that I could find. I would love to, like, people, and maybe we can try that out before this is published, where we're actually uploading photos ourselves that we can attach to even tie it more directly to. And then from there, like, as you kind of evolve in your enthusiast journey, now for myself, like, 3 Series BMWs are the model that I'm interested in, so I can subscribe and follow that car model on Car Curious, and any podcast now that mentions the 3 Series will show up in my feed, and it's like, oh, here's a podcast episode talking about BMWs, and if you want to do that with the Cayman GT4, you can do that as well.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's really taken the podcast to a different point. Podcasts on YouTube have gotten popular in the last years. Like mine, the audio automatically gets uploaded no matter what through my podcast distribution platform. People are just publishing, just like we're going to do with this episode. People are putting the video out there. So how about having the video and then all these facts, and then you click, not my product, but I'm excited about it. You click a link and it takes you to some more detail. Maybe it takes you to Wikipedia. Maybe it takes you to an active auction or a past auction. Maybe it's your past auction on the car that you bought, right? That we were talking about. So yeah, I can really see this. The sky's the limit on Get Car Curious.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Yeah. One of the kind of most visual podcasts that I saw from the audio standpoint, because yes, YouTube is huge, right? And getting bigger, maybe. But on the audio front, like the Bring a Trailer podcast, they don't do video, but their show note links link to every single auction that they talk about, right? And so, yes, if we put that link in the show notes, like that's one of the things I built when I started, was parse all the show notes, find the links to the cool things in, and then pull whatever, imagery we can from there too. So we can definitely give that a shot.
Yeah. Well, there's no limit to the creativity. And when it comes to car enthusiasts, there's no end to how deep you can go, right? So I'm super excited to see where things go with Get Car Curious. I can't wait, of course, to see To All the Cars I've Loved Before on there.
Absolutely. So
and the Get Car Curious feed, of course, but
yeah, what is that? The Lamborghini Countach. I cannot pronounce it. Maybe you can pronounce the Quarter to Royale. We'll figure it out.
Lamborghini Countach. You said it right.
Yeah, exactly. But there's the trim on it anyway. But one of these just went on Bring a Trailer for almost $1 million as well. So plot twist, that's not the car I picked up, even though that's the one in my background. But, being a dad and having the Lego experience, as you see with the map and the car, this is where we start, right, with our dream cars. And, it just kind of goes back to those 80s and 90s of our youth, and like the posters we have on our walls and the shows and the magazines. I remember getting like a Lamborghini magazine at some point, in middle school or whatever. It was just the power and the speed and, the looks, right? Like they're pretty amazing just when you see one still at Cars and Coffees or car shows or whatever.
Yeah, they are, as I understand, not very easy to drive and not comfortable, but that it sold in the 80s, it was all about excess, right? You think about stockbrokers and just all the exciting things that were going on in the 80s. I have been digging in, and I like to share this with people because it just popped into my head when I bought my 300ZX, 1990 Nissan 300ZX. Like, man, I would love to have some old magazines. So, of course, you can find all this stuff on eBay and whatnot. Hopefully, it'll show up on the screen if you're watching on video. Here's a car and drive. What's on the front? A Miata and a 300ZX. Well, I owned a Miata. I actually owned 2 back in the day. And now I own a 300ZX. And I remember reading this exact magazine. And I had, for those who are watching us live, another plug, I have glasses on. And so I used to read these cover to cover, and now print media is kind of dead. And in looking at it, and this magazine is in great shape, I actually have trouble reading the font. What did somebody my age, did they have that problem, or are we just spoiled from, being able to make something quicker, easier to read? And I've become admittedly a huge Kindle fan. I prefer a book, but you can't go wrong. It feeds the itch. You can get anything you want right away. You don't have to go to the library. But
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm new to glasses as well, and so I'm definitely on the Kindle train because I don't have
Yeah.
to wear them when I read and whatnot. But yeah, I even found
He's got a magazine too, I think.
this is my life now of like,
Yeah.
just going to the store and like seeing this and it's like, huh, that looks cool. I'll check it out.
Yeah. No, I love it. And you've taken like a couple things you love, right? And the car thing is growing on you, right? And your interest, right?
Right.
Computers, applications, podcasts, and my favorite thing, cars. And
Mm,
you're doing something with it. And that's, right, wrong, or indifferent. There's nothing wrong with it. And, that's why I started doing the podcast. I mean, thanks to Christian who helped me, but
yeah.
I need something else as I get older and I'm not so focused on my career anymore. For good or bad, I'll say winding down. It's been a great career for 30 plus years doing computer networking. Now I get to have fun with cars and meet people in the car space. And whether it's somebody who loves cars and works on them and is always either trading up, like we had John Clock on, or if it's somebody
Mhm.
who's a Porsche Cup driver, we're going to have Sabre Cook and her father, Stacy Cook, on, or it's somebody like you and I who are just cars are the outlet.
Right.
And it's just that mutual love. So thank you for being with us tonight, Ryan. I really hope to have you back again soon, talk about more cars, hear more about Get Car Curious, link Car Curious with this episode and others. And you've been riding shotgun with To All the Cars I've Loved Before. This is the podcast celebrating the metal that shaped our lives and the stories that keep them running. And if today's podcast sparked a memory of your own ride or a project gathering dust in the corner, or you want to hear about it, tell us, drop us an email. You can send it to doug@carslove.com, but also stories@carslove.com, I think is a little easier to remember, or you can find us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And again, special thanks to Ryan for joining. If you want to learn more about Ryan and his project, it is getcarcurious.com. And for anybody else, if you're listening, if you enjoyed going down the memory lane today with us, follow us, tell a friend, leave a review on Apple Podcasts. That's the best way to help our community grow. And if you're looking for one central place to go to find all our content, go to our link tree, linktr.ee/carslove. That's our digital switchboard. And you can find links to our YouTube, our email, our podcast intake. If you want to be a guest, we have it all there. Until next time, keep the windows down and the stories move.